So now what we can do is have a little bit of fun with the overall atmosphere. Actually, before we do that, let's just put in a quick couple of other photographic textures here. What I want to do is I want to put a pool texture in the water, and I want to put a reflection in the glass. Really easy to do in Photoshop. SketchUp doesn't naturally give you reflections on materials. That's just not what it's meant to do. So it's just not a big headache to get that done in Photoshop. So I'm actually going to go online into Google, and I'm just going to type in pool texture. So what I've done is I've gone into Google Images and I've just found an image of pool water that I felt would work well with this drawing. I'm going to move that below a lot of my painted ground cover. I certainly don't want that in front of the grass. So what I've done is I've just dragged layer, it's called layer 2 right now. I'm going to drag that below ground cover. Let's call that pool texture. So now I'm just going to have fun, and I'm going to kind of stretch it out, make it fit. If you want to work with your perspective, I certainly encourage you to do so. A lot of times these loose, rough textures don't need to be in perspective, but what I'm doing now is just matching the texture up to the perspective lines that SketchUp has already given me for the pool. This makes our job very, very easy in matching up perspective. So now I've got pool texture. Let's turn that to overlay and see what it does. So I'm not a fan of what it did for the saturation of the water. So I'm just going to desaturate it a little bit. I'm going to adjust the levels, just get a little bit more white out of it. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. It's okay to talk to yourself while you're doing all this. I do it all the time. So remember this color select layer? We haven't used it a whole lot lately, but now let's talk about why we have that. So now what I want to do is I want to mask out the pool in the pool shape. You can see that I've got some bleeding going on over here on the bottom right edge. So if I go to my color select layer, it doesn't even have to be on, but I use my magic wand tool and select that. What it's done is it's selected all my green, which I colored in my SketchUp model, as my pool material. So now I have a beautiful selection already pre-selected for me thanks to the modeling export that I did earlier. I can come up here to pool texture and mask that. And so now I have a perfect mask of the pool water. It's a great shortcut, and it's the reason why we do it. So I'm just adjusting the saturation of the pool. It might have come out a little bit too vibrant for the tone of this drawing. What I want to show, just to add a little bit more movement and richness to the glass, we have a lot of glass here on this kind of pool cabana house. In this scenario, this may be looking out onto the beach. And so what we can do to reinforce that notion and that lifestyle of being close to the beach is we can work on throwing a little bit of reflection of the ocean and of the beach into the glass. So I found this Cayman Island image on Google, and I am going to have that, I'm going to transform that, scale it. And because in the final image, no one's ever going to know, I could put a little bit more right here. And I like this guy too, so that guy can reflect there. Maybe he wants to be a little bit different. So here's my reflection. So let's call layer 2, let's call that the reflection layer. Going back to our color select layer, what we can do is we can select the yellow. There we go. So let me hide the reflection layer. So because I'm on my color select layer and I selected yellow, I can come up here and go select similar. Should select all the glass for me, and if not, you can. So what happened there was, for whatever reason, it didn't select all the yellow. I saw that pane in the background wasn't selected. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in with the magic wand, and if I hold shift, I get a little plus sign with my magic wand, and I'm just going to add that to the selection. So I've added to my save selection my color select layer on the reflections. And let's go back and open our reflection layer, or turn it back on. We're going to add a mask. Look at that. We're starting to get some reflection in the windows. And so now I'm going to turn that down, turn the opacity down. Let's see what it looks like on an overlay layer. I don't like that. So I've turned the opacity way down, and I'm just going to pump up the levels here a little bit, just adjust them subtly. So now we've actually got some reflection of oceanfront and tree and some coconut palms on the beach, and that just adds a lot of movement to the glass. What we can do, there's some tricks we can do to really start tying this particular drawing or any drawing you're working on together. One thing we can do is we can add some atmosphere. And basically all I'm doing is I'm adding dust and water particles that show up in real life kind of into the drawing, kind of making it a little bit more fuzzy, a little hazy, just to add a little bit of some stronger atmospheric effects. And so I've created a new layer, and we can call this atmosphere. And again, use whatever layer style works for you. I'm going to experiment with a couple here and just see if I like how it's feeling. Because we've already established some of this early morning or late afternoon light, I'm going to keep with the warmer tones here. So all I'm doing is I'm now painting a little bit of light into the scene. And just pushing back some of the middle of the drawing just ever so slightly. So let me turn that on and off and show you what happened there. You can see it's kind of dark, a little more dark, and now we're really starting to add some nice lighting effects here. And all I'm doing is I'm painting this in with my Wacom pen here, just with a big round soft brush. I'm creating a new layer just because I want to push that in certain areas a little bit further. Maybe there's a little bit more bloom around the tree edges. I don't know. Again, play with it. See what captures the spirit of your project. See what works for you. That might have been too much, so easy enough in Photoshop to go back. I'm just taking a look. Sometimes it's best to look away from a drawing just for a minute or two, a quick second, and just put your eye back on the screen, see if it's still working for you. In this case, and for this tutorial, I feel like, this is a pretty decent job of capturing some of the spirit we're trying to get here with this project. You can push the background trees a little bit more, really get some of that moisture of beachfront property in the drawing here. And I think for me now, I'm just going to add a few finishing touches. So overall, I'm pretty content with where this drawing has gone. Now I'm just going to add a few kind of final details. And so I know, for instance, I kind of wanted some outdoor hanging lights that went over the furniture. Want to talk about putting in entourage. Entourage is really important for your drawings. It helps with scale. It helps with activity. It helps really, depending on what kind of entourage you're using, it can really help with, setting some activity and some mood and energy in a drawing too. As I'm looking at this drawing as well, I think this line here that I'm looking at is a little too hard edge, and so let's go fix it. So let's create a new layer. Let's move that under our grass layer because we still want the grass to show up. And we can just call this, let's call it paints, just because that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to paint, and I'm going to select the white color, and I'm just going to soften that edge a little bit. Just so it bleeds out just a little bit more. All right, so let's put those lights in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import in some hanging lights that I know that I want to put into this drawing. So this is just a transparent PNG of some lights that I found. I'm going to come back to my drawing. I'm going to paste those in. Now these are on their own layer, so I'm just going to move these in here, scale those in. Let's see where they ended up. So I can move those kind of up towards the top of my stack. I moved them below the atmosphere just so they felt a little more integrated into the drawing. If I move those on top of the atmosphere, they get a little darker, but then they kind of feel pasted in as like it's more of a collage style look than a cohesive drawing. So I've just moved those beneath the atmosphere layer. Now I'm just kind of looking at what scale I want to put those at. I'm not really sure at this time. Then what I want to do is add my entourage. So I'm going to come in here and pick some nice people on vacation. And then we are going to place our folks. And, with entourage, you can really start telling a story. Maybe these people had just wrapped up from a nice day at the pool, and so they're heading back to the pool. So placement of entourage is really important, to help solidify the story. If I had put these guys anywhere, sometimes the question can arise, well, that doesn't look too natural. Why are they doing that? And in this case, if I put them in about here in the drawing, you can make the argument that they've just wrapped up from a couple hours at the pool and they're heading back into the house, and it feels much more natural and much more of a solid story here. And so going back to what we talked about earlier, I'm just going to draw them in with a bit of a line work around them. All right. We can call these peeps. So because these guys are a little bit more in the foreground, one way to add a lot of depth into your drawing is you can add elements in your drawing in front of the atmosphere. So I'm dragging them on top of the atmosphere layer in my stack that I've created. And what that does is it makes them feel like they're forward of kind of the mist and the haze that's happening here in the morning. And I can see that they're walking on the grass, and that's not right. So if I come down here and hold Command and hit, select the grass layer, that'll give me my automatic mask. And you can see what happened here is it actually masked out their feet because I had the grass selected. Quick way to fix that is if you hold Command-Shift-I on a Mac, that's select inverse. And what that's going to do is it's going to select the direct opposite of the selection that you have. And so now when I hit it, that's going to be much more along the lines of what I was looking for here. So we're just going to make her foot disappear behind the grass. So we're getting really close. I hold Control when I have the black arrow in Photoshop selected. I hold Control on a Mac quite a bit, and if I click, that'll tell me all the layers that are directly built up where I'm selecting in the Photoshop file. So I just want to look at my shadows again. In reality, this is supposed to be a painted stucco, and it's reading really purple because of my shadows, and so I'm just going to get rid of a little bit of that. And the way I'm going to do that is I can come in here to my shadow mask that I created much earlier in the drawing, and I'm just going to brighten that up a little bit. So it's going to feel that starts to feel a little bit more like painted stucco. So there's no rule saying that you can't go back to other layers when you're finished with them, finished working on them. I think one of the beauties of working with SketchUp and Photoshop is it's so fluid. You can go back and change things in the model, export it out the same view and bring them into this file, and they'll come in right where you want them. In Photoshop, you can adjust all your layers, and it's just a very intuitive, fluid process for creating a concept drawing like this. So at this stage, I'm feeling pretty good. There might be a couple things I want to do with the colors. So what I can do is, at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save a flattened Photoshop file. So we'll call all the layer work good at this point. I'm going to save as, let's call it Cayman Home Flat. And the only thing you really need to pay attention to here is just uncheck your layers. So once I uncheck that, Photoshop will automatically save it as a copy, which is fine. You can still do a Photoshop file, but we're not interested in any of the layers anymore. And that's going to make your file size much more manageable when you are working with larger files as if you start with a flattened file. So we're now going to open. We're going to open that file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a adjustment layer, and the way to do that is directly to the right of our layer mask icon in the Photoshop palette is a adjustment layer icon. We're going to click that, and let's just see what happens if we tweak our levels just a little bit. So it wasn't much, but if you look, what I did is I really brightened up a lot of the color. That actually may be too much. So a quick way to work or to adjust that is you can either scale the opacity back, or like any layer mask, you can come in and you can erase out what you don't want. So now I'm just erasing back in areas that were too blown out for my taste. Okay. One thing I always like to look at, whether I keep the layer or not, is just to see if I can, is there any way I can add just a little bit more warmth to the drawing? So I'm just going to add an adjustment layer with just a little bit of red. Let's just see if that helps the drawing. And to me, I think it does. Here it is without the color adjustment. Here it is with. And it's just a little bit more of that nice red and yellow. And you really pick it up in some of the background trees and some of the, especially in the stone there too. So at this point, you can sharpen the image if you're looking to just get a little bit more sharpness in the final image. So what I've done is I've copied a layer up, and I'm just going to go to, let's do an unsharp mask. And this little dialog box will pop up, and you can adjust the sharpness in this dialog box here. And all I'm doing is I'm just looking at, I obviously don't want this to be too sharp. These are supposed to be soft watercolor emotive drawings. And but what I am trying to do is bring out a little bit of detail in the plants and grasses. It's not much, but all these little tweaks really do help. You pick it up a lot in stone too. At this stage, I think you really could call this drawing done. I think you can also come in here. You know, I wanted just a little bit more color in the architecture, maybe to draw the eye into the architecture a little bit more. So I'm going to add some quick flowers to the planter bed. So I'm going to use my paintbrush tool and come in and pick a very kind of messy artistic spatter brush. So I'll paint a little here so you can see what I'm talking about. So to me, what I think we have here at the end is a very effective drawing that helps communicate the spirit of place. We're not looking for a photorealistic rendering this early in the design phase. What we're doing is we're trying to stir conversation with the client and say, here are our thoughts on some of the architecture that we're proposing that we build for your particular project. And with this painterly, softer style, these drawings become much more approachable for a client to then feel like they're part of the conversation and that they can really weigh in and add their 2 cents about what they feel like the project should ultimately become. So from my point of view, these are great design tools, and it's something that can be done relatively quickly, especially given you know, the longer you work on these, the quicker and more intuitive they're going to become. So Appreciate you all watching. This was Concept Drawing with Jeremy of Studio JDK, and we'll talk to you next time.